Today I'm talking about something very interesting. For some, it will be abstract. Others will listen to it intellectually. Others will identify easily with what I'm talking about. The title of the talk today is called The Spiritual Process of Change. So let me begin. A person can travel the spiritual path from childhood to adulthood and yet still not undergo the process of transformational change. And this is going to be my focus today, is the process of transformational change. It is a very real phenomena or very real experience when a person undergoes transformational change. It's, yes, in part it's psychological, of course it's spiritual, but it's also physical and etheric. And this is something that spiritual students don't recognize or even think about it until it actually happens. But the question we want to ask ourselves is, all right, if the spiritual process is a process of change, and we read so many, these three words in the book, all the books of the teaching, sublimation, transformation, transfiguration. We read about, in Agni Yoga particularly, the process of self-perfectment. The question behind this process is, how does it affect us beyond the psychology, beyond the experience of changing our consciousness? What happens when we change our consciousness? So that's what I'm going to be talking in part about today, and sharing a few stories by Helena Rourke of her experiences called the fiery sacred pain. In the Agni Yoga teaching, there are several references to the influences that an Agni yogi experiences as they travel the path of transformation. Master M indicates that as a yogi undergoes the spiritual process of change, their health will be affected. You can read about such experiences about the life of Helena Rourke through the book called At the Threshold of the New World, which is her writings, and in the book The High Path, which is a book of conversations that take place between Helena Rourke and the Master. These two books, but others, substantiate the fact of how the health is affected through the spiritual process of change. Also, there are a few declarations about this change that can be found in the book Supramundane, which is an Agni Yoga book. For example, here is a quote from Supramundane, verse 158. Urasvati, who is the spiritual name of Helena Rourke, Urasvati knows the sacred pain. Physicians today would call it neuralgia, rheumatism, nervous spasms, or inflammation of the nerves. There may be many diagnoses, but even an earthly physician will notice something unusual is taking place. This something is a pulsation of psychic energy. One can observe that these pains appear without evident cause and disappear without any effect. They are never the same, and it is impossible to foresee which center will be affected. again, and that's from the book Super Mundane 158. In the book The High Path, Volume 2, there are some conversations between Helena Rourke and her teacher, Master Moria, about her fiery experiences. Here are a few quotes. This was in July of 1929. Helena Rourke said, "I could barely stand. I felt terrible congestion and pain in my abdomen." MM responded saying, "Do not be upset. It is also difficult for us in the earthly sphere. Your body has been refined by the will of the higher spheres. It is necessary to select," he goes on to say, "it is necessary to select the healthiest food. It is best not to eat cucumbers now. All other vegetables may be consumed. The centers of the abdominal area are kindling. The centers are transmuted into the subtle fires for the next step. My dear one," he says, "my sign is over you. My spirit is with you. My power is with you. My creativity is with you." HR asks MM, she says, "Which centers are considered the lowest?" MM responds by saying, "As the lower centers manifest, the higher spirit gradually refines all. Of course, it is not only the external tension, but also a new kindling of the center that produces pain." HR says, "What center? Is it the pituitary gland?" MM answers, "It is at the top of the spine, called the torch. This torch is also related to what we call the alta major center and the medulla oblongata." HR says to MM, "What is your name for it?" MM says, "You already gave its name. I already warned you to be careful these days because the torch may cause conflagration in other centers." June 1st, 1933. Helena Rourke said, "I had the worst headache. I felt dizzy in the morning. I took musk twice and had more pain in the evening, when the pain increased in the back of my head as if my whole head is splitting." MM responded, "More rest is necessary. The battle is terrible and the currents are heavy." July 1933. HR told MM, "I feel very ill. There has been tension in the solar plexus since this morning. At noon, I felt a strong stirring, vomiting with saliva, and was very drained. I coughed up saliva 3 times during the day and also had tension and pain in the centers at the nape of the neck." In the book Agni Yoga, verse 201, it says this: "There exists the false impression that a yogi possesses unfailing health in the usual sense. But can one fashion a sensitive instrument out of a log? Does not the value of the strings of the veena," the veena is a kind of guitar that's used in Tibet and India, "does not the value of the strings of the veena lie in their response to the finest intervals of tone? Equally resonant is the sensitive apparatus of the yogi. Indeed, to him alone are known the indescribable fleeting pains which, like the tuning of the strings of the vina, transform his being. One can understand that we shall not stress any lack of danger on the path of yoga. How can one avoid pain during the regeneration of the centers? All the usual vocabulary of these pains is useless, so long as science will not hasten to understand the significance of psychic energy or spirituality. The farther a person is removed from understanding the danger of yoga, the farther the person is from unity with the highest consciousness. For this, casual flights of consciousness are not valuable. What is needed is the incessant song of soaring. The vina does not always ring out, but its intonation is always harmonious. Those who seek yoga for robust health, says MM, had better partake of a glass of wine and discuss lofty ideas without applying them to life. For the health of a yogi flutters like the wings of a soaring eagle. The eye of the yogi sees like the eagle eye, which you know. The calm of the yogi is like the tension of the ocean wave. And that was from the book Agni Yoga, verse 201. Now, about the regeneration of the centers. As you study the subject of the igniting of the centers in the teaching, you soon learn about the human constitution and its centers. The centers in the human constitution are called the base of the spine, the sacral and spleen centers, the solar plexus center, the heart and throat centers, the ajna or pituitary gland, and the head center, which corresponds to the pineal gland. These centers are found in the etheric body of the human constitution, except the pituitary and the pineal gland, which are part of the brain. These centers are also found in corresponding glands found in the physical body. The centers are also found in the astral and the mental body, but in a more refined substance. The regeneration of the centers requires transmutation and transformation, which then creates change. So transmutation, transformation creates spiritual change. And my experience is transmutation and transformation work together, even though there is an emphasis on one over the other in the process. The higher cosmic ethers are extremely beautiful, and they are imbued with the fire of space. Eventually, the Agni Yogi will draw these higher energies into their lower nature because of spiritual change. So the first step, transmutation. Transmutation occurs when the energy comes from the higher substance into the lower centers in the etheric body of your human constitution. And then transformation takes place, transforming the nature of these centers. So as above, so below. Spiritual change through the process of transmutation and transformation. This process of transformation begins to reflect itself truer to the nature of your divine archetype or monad. The next major stage of spiritual change is called transfiguration. So we've gone from transmutation through the process leading to transformation, and transformation leads to the process of transfiguration. Transfiguration is where the higher cosmic ethers replace the lower etheric. Where the higher cosmic ethers replace your lower ethers. The atoms of your lower ethers then enter into your physical body and are assimilated, making your physical body more etheric. So you can see that there's an actual process taking place, and it begins above and eventually manifests into the etheric and physical body. When this stage of spiritual change occurs, you become increasingly sensitive to light, sensitive to sound, sensitive to fragrance, sensitive to the needs of others, sensitive to hierarchy, and later to Shambhala, and so on. So what are the higher centers? The intuitional plane, the atmic plane, the monadic plane, and the divine plane. The lower ether is the substance from which our physical body is made. The four cosmic ethers are beyond the consciousness of most people, the intuitional, atmic, monadic, and divine. They are beyond the mental body. These four cosmic ethers are beyond the mental body. Nonetheless, some people have an awareness of these higher ethers, first by their studies, and sometimes at a certain moment of influence through the help of their solar angel, contact with the master, or in advanced stages of meditation. Transmutation first requires purification. Purification of the physical, emotional, and lower mental bodies. Lower mental bodies would be basically the subconscious. Through the elimination of glamours and illusions. So you read in the teaching, in all of the books, all the philosophies related to hierarchy talk about the need to eliminate illusion, to eliminate glamour, to eliminate Maya. And this is why. It's a process that leads you from transformation to transfiguration. If you don't undergo that process, you stay the same. From childhood to adulthood, even if you have all the blue books, all the red books, all the purple books, you remain the same. Transmutation also requires bringing more of the substance of the fourth cosmic ether, which is the Buddhic ether, into the lower ethers. This transference ignites the lower ether, the lower centers, with the higher fire. When approximately 50% of your lower etheric body is changed by the way of the Buddhic substance, you release yourself from the control of the four centers of the fourth level, fourth subplane of the astral plane. When you continue to exchange more of the lower etheric substance with the substance of intuition, the intuitional or Buddhic plane, you will then release yourself in the control of the four centers on the mental plane. The fourth subplane of the mental plane, fourth subplane of the astral, and its higher correspondence. When you begin to undergo transformation, more energy, more of the substance of the Buddhic plane comes in and affects that fourth subplane of the mental plane and the centers there. Liberating your consciousness or enabling your consciousness to finally function in the higher mental plane, enabling you now and finally to function in the causal body. It is at this stage of spiritual change you are now liberated from the control of the lower centers of the physical. It is at the stage of transfiguration where you can now fully escape the limitations of the lower ethers and function in the higher mental planes. Now, the etheric body is the prototype of the physical body. We know that, most of us. The etheric body is the most important protective substance to the human constitution and person, helping to prevent premature contact with these higher fires along the spine and the various planes and centers. Although that protective mechanism can be violated, the violation takes place through wrong exercises such as Kundalini exercises, prolonged chanting, prolonged or wrong meditation, as well as abuse of drugs and alcohol. The substance of the higher ethers can replace the substance of the lower ethers safely only through self-discipline, mind control, purification of the physical, emotional, and mental bodies, and dedication dedication to service and joy. It's a lot. It's a lot, but I'm going to go on. So you can take notes. You can listen to this on YouTube later. Take the notes you missed from this morning and really think about it. Put it in your file drawer or your file folder in your computer, because I guarantee you at one point you're going to want to go back and now say, so that's what's happening to me. Our doctors today don't know. So what needs to be changed? Our etheric body is like our physical body. Take a look at your physical body. Is there anything in your body that has been used destructively? Wrong thinking, excessive sex, unhealthy sexual relations, rotten thinking, depression, and so forth, irritation, imperil. The etheric body, too, has its crystallized patches, distortions, and rotten spots. All these things must first be repaired and then thrown out so that the higher ethers can increase your lower bodies, the lower centers in your lower bodies, and replace the discarded parts. Now, illumination. You must, to travel on the path of transformation, the path of spiritual change, aspire to something greater. And this is what Agni Yoga is about. And this is why some people will be repelled by Agni Yoga, or they just read a word and it's like oil and water. There's nothing that can assimilate, nothing that can mix together until there is a degree of illumination that's taken place in your consciousness in some lifetime that is now ready. And we'll open one of those books and say, I don't understand this, but I know it. And then you're on your way, and then these words in time almost become like illuminated on the page. And it's like one word can be written into an entire book of 700 pages. Just one word. And that's the teaching of Agni Yoga. So we must, to travel on this path of transformation, aspire to be something greater, aspire to change ourselves, and Agni Yoga helps us. How can we aspire to change ourselves if we are not inspired to make these changes? So inspiration must come to us by contact with something or someone higher or greater than ourselves. Even the sun festivals, also known as full moon meditation gatherings, can charge us with a moment of inspiration. It will be that moment of inspiration that's going to create a spiritual tension if you have prepared yourself. Spiritual tension within your consciousness that will cause you to aspire to change yourself, to allow yourself to be shaped into a sensitive instrument. Inspiration can come in the form of a call, a vision, an energy which comes to you from a higher source and invites you to work on a higher level or do some labor which in the past you were not yet ready to do. But now you are capable of doing it. You hear the call and you respond by saying, "Yes, Lord, I am ready." To prepare yourself, you must try to live in the light of beauty, goodness, righteousness, joy, freedom, striving, and sacrificial service, as well as a life of virtue, especially the practice of harmlessness. So purification, what are you going to purify? Physically, you want to eat pure food and have pure sexual relationships. Or, as some spiritual philosophies say, no relationship at all. In sexual relations, the auras of the two people mix together like two bottles of colored water. If one is clean and the other has lots of germs, you're going to pollute your aura, and you will lose contact with inspiration. You'll stop meditating, stop reading or studying, and things will fall apart within your system. You'll deviate from the path of transformation. Emotional purification. You must purify your negative emotions. Once you clean yourself of negative emotions, you will then become emotionally magnetic. Mental purification is very interesting. For example, to think about mental purification, you can think about the vibration of one note. If you sound one note in perfect pitch, then all that is not in harmony with that note will not be attracted to it, or will be rejected and eventually fall away. This is what you must do with the mental body. You must be one-pointed and focused so that anything that is not in harmony with your one-pointedness will fall away, such as vanity, ego, and so forth will drop away. Even information will drop away. And finally will be unable to negatively influence your mind. Mental purity can be achieved only through right meditation. Right meditation means to raise the level of the vibration of the mental body so that it meets the vibration of the higher self. As your soul meets the vibration of your higher self and you penetrate into the sphere of the higher self, your mind then becomes purified. So how can we tell, this is a quote, how can we tell the sweet that is phony from the sweet that is from a higher self, higher source? The devil always dressed beautifully, but his tail forever remains at the crossroads of the door. Unquote. Through the purification of your threefold nature, you will become very magnetic. To the degree of your purification is to the degree you will receive inspiration. It is the inspiration that causes you to aspire towards spiritual change. And that's it. I know there's so much there, and believe me, I could talk for another 3 hours. You know, really. Or longer. So hopefully you'll give yourself some time to go back and listen to this talk, make more notes, and then think about your own experiences and see how your experiences fall into this process of spiritual change.